So yesterday we've ended up um, debugging our script task using Visual Studio. But rarely, especially in the beginning, we will be so lucky as to have access to file system. And so today we will start with how we address such items as a script using cloud environment. And we will try a few items. So first, as of now, we have only one termination event. And we only have a happy pass. So we obtained a yacht ID, we obtained a drive type, and then we run our script task and we terminate our business process. But we should try and capture what if something goes wrong? What if we did not capture yacht? Or what if we did not capture yacht ID? And that should lead to different termination events. So it will be very easy to us in the process log to see which route was taken and which termination we've ended up with. So this happy pass will end up with a success termination, and then we will have something else. And here we will switch the sequence flow, which essentially only puts together the order of the execution. We will change it to conditional flow. And the condition is going to be that after the execution of this element, the result of its execution returned an ID of a drive type, which is not an empty ID. So an ID is not nullable if there is no ID. What we work with is a GUID empty. Is a GUID empty, which, no. Sorry, this will not work. Which looks something like, and so on and so on. So we want to sure that after this execution, whatever ID we extracted is not an empty ID. So the condition is going to be here formulated as drive type element. The result, which is drive type, is not equal to GUID empty. So this is our condition to proceed with the happy pass. And we will give a name to this condition, drive type present. Alternatively, if that is not true, so we will use a default flow, essentially that will stand for else. We will end up with termination that will state no drive type. We'll save this and try to run our process again. So we are using sales for this. Actions, average ticket price, successfully started. And we'll go to process log. Average ticket price just completed. And we will see here, unfortunately, simply sorting by start or end date because of the format of this item that is not, as a class, milliseconds are there, but they are not allowing the sorting. So unfortunately, they will not always be sorted in the correct order. In this scenario, they are though, and we see that we've ended up success. And we can also see the execution diagram, but even without it, Just giving our termination a proper name will allow us to understand which route was taken. And now I'm going to start this again. I'm going to clear drive type. Obviously, I will have to save this because read data is actually running a SQL query to database. And as of now, I am in edit data mode of the page. So the only thing that had changed now is the page attribute. So this is not yet sent to application server and after to database. Only after I saved, I want to run my average ticket price again. Back to my log. New record appeared. I'd have to refresh it. Rather than refreshing the browser tab, I can simply click the process log to only refresh the list. I see a new one. And I see that we've tried to run drive type and we've ended up with termination, no drive type. So this worked perfectly to us. Now we will add another no-code element, very useful for debugging, especially in cooperation with no-code creators, which is connect process to object. In this scenario, with this element, by one element, we can only connect to one record. So if I would want to connect my business process to both yacht and drive type objects, I would need to use two elements. So just to keep in mind. Now, I want to connect it to a yacht that triggered this business process. So I will call this to yacht, connect to yacht, connected object yacht, record of the connected object. To remind you from yesterday, we have a global parameter, yacht ID, that obtains the ID of triggering yacht from the button logic. Button is pressed, yacht ID is passed, and stored in this global parameter until we reach termination, and garbage collector will clear this to free the memory. So record, process parameters, and we have only two parameters that store an ID. One drive type ID parameter we use to pass read drive type into script task, and this one we use in the read element to obtain the drive type ID. So double click and we will connect this to yacht. We'll run this again. Back to log. New log entry. And now we see connected to HMS Victory. And there it is, HMS Victory. So how is this useful? Now I have a link where I can simply, if I have some pop-ups, I have some data, and I want to check whether or not the execution is correct. We are processing a collection. Sometimes we only process one record, and we want to see all these variables that were included into compilation process and all other items, including, wait a minute. We've cleared. Yeah, so it's unsuccessful, but it is connected. So no drive type still. Let's return the drive type for further testings. But yeah, even though there is no drive type, it is still connected to HMS Victory, and I could have just said, is there really no drive type? Yes, there is. In fact, I forgot to return drive type to that vessel. So very useful no-code tools where we can simply use this. The other step is a little bit more complex, but can still be utilized by no-code creators also, and will be very useful to you. So now I'm switching from process log to process library because I want to access, here is my business process, and I want to access its properties. And the property is tracing that I will enable. I have a tooltip that warned me that to optimize performance, that there is a performance cost, and because of that, it will be turned off automatically in 3-4 days. Don't quite remember. But we only need this for debugging of our process. So we don't want to run processes and forever store all the values that we've used in parameters. And there are quite a few of them. So I can always switch to advanced mode and I can see that even with more simplistic, well, not in this scenario probably, but we will see in some other tasks that there are quite, so we still have just a few more, but with some elements, there are many, many more. So this is the advanced settings of this element, and we will see a lot more. And I don't want to store this because usually this is garbage that, well, it's some technical important for execution metadata that is unnecessary to me. If I don't want to store this, and I shouldn't, then it's going to be off. But keep in mind that logging is only works for processes where logging is enabled, and by default it is. And I think that the cost of enabling this is adequate, so I don't see a good reason not to use this. Okay, so now that tracing is enabled, let's save this and see how this worked for us. Now I want to say drive type to be filled in. I will initiate this again. Back to process log. Here is the latest execution, just to be on the safe side. Yes, this is the latest execution. I will try to sort to yacht, drive type, average. Yeah, so yeah, now it is sorted properly, but again, sometimes it won't. So let's check to yacht, the first element, which is a no-code debugging tool, show trace data. And so what we see here is at least two global parameters. Well, we see all global parameters under process parameters. And we have element parameters. And we have the ID of the object that we are connecting this to. But we also see, which can be a little bit more important, some global parameters. At this time in execution, the parameter yacht ID is already populated with the value. This is the unique identifier for HMS Victory. The drive type ID is not yet read, so this is what GUID empty looks like. Next element is reading drive type. So this is one of the reasons in your convention to add something that may be redundant, not calling this drive type, but read drive type. On schema, this seems redundant, but in log, it could be useful. So let's read into drive type. And we will see that there is an ID of the yacht. There is an ID of user drive type, and suffix ID says that this is actually the database column value. And because we're using Creatio entities, Creatio objects, after instantiation to create a reading query, in addition to the ID, we operate with key value pair, so we can even see the display value sale. Though at this point in time, as this element was executed, if we go to global process parameter drive type ID, it's still GUID empty. So this is something to keep in mind. This doesn't mean that there is something wrong. It's just that only with the next element we would be able to see the drive type ID is properly populated. Another approach, which is a more explicit assigning, would be to add a formula here. It's not necessarily redundant, and that formula would be that we rather than populating like we did using the global parameter features, so drive type ID parameter takes in value from after element execution. But a more explicit approach would be using this assigning operator, where we would say that process parameter drive type ID will be assigned with a new value, which is a formula. And our formula is a simple macro, which takes the drive type after processing read drive type element. A more explicit approach, but it will result in the same. Though sometimes your especially if you at this time you have some splitting without gateways, sometimes just processing that conditions might take just a small bit, and it could be that that would be an absolute edge case, but it could be that you're trying to process next element even before this is assigned. This is when they're executed in background. So there are a lot of ifs and conditions to achieve that. But if you are sure that you are assigning properly, maybe try to use this approach with formula to assign value. So this is okay. This is as it's meant to be. Now, unfortunately, if we go to average ticket price script task, we will not be able to see tracing. So as of now in creation, and I'm not sure if we will ever have this, but we are not able to trace execution of a compiled element because the only data that is necessary to business process execution is this. This is the only thing that is necessary to business process engine. That whatever had to happen happened, and so we return true. So if we want to see those values, what we could have done, adding maybe temporarily some redundant item and maybe another read data, just to see those globals values and check if they are correct. And we could read a yacht, still, same yacht. We're not adding anything useful, but we want to make it as, as simple as possible towards our system. So only selected columns, obviously, and maybe I want to see captain. Why not? I'm not really doing this for the user. Back to our runtime. I start this business process again. Refresh process log. Here is our read data user task. And if I go to global parameters, I see the drive type ID is there. Yacht ID we've seen already. SQL text, we see the SQL text, perfect. And average ticket parameter is this. So if my script task is last, for debugging, I don't have the file system at my disposal. This could be a workaround just to make sure that everything is working as it should with my global parameters. Now that I'm done, I say this is redundant and I can save my process. And now finally, we will change this process So it shows something to our user. I upped my pacing a bit, because we still have some items to cover. If it's uncomfortable, if you want me to repeat anything, please feel free to interrupt me at any time. So we will use a pre-configured Freedom UI page in the under user actions to show something to the end user. We don't have that page yet, so we hit plus and we have two options. Classic UI starting 832, and we do have 832, even though unfortunately unpolished build as it appeared. But classic UI is no longer supported, which means that you can still turn classic UI shell on. You can still utilize classic UI pages, but be mindful that some of the major features that we are concentrating on, especially now in the age of AI and business application for AI, where we're now shifting that the vision is that probably rather sooner than later, users will primarily use. Now the cost is the only like blocker, but Creatio can connect to other LLMs. And what we see as a trend, probably sooner than later, this is going to be main user interface, not in Creatio, in most of the business applications, where they will ask questions, receive information, which is data, operations, anything. And a big part of this is working with the context. So user is working with some pages and like so, for example, they can, by the way, make this change. And they would need to have a dialogue with an AI agent that is in the context of this page. Classic UI will not allow the access. So even in Freedom UI Shell, you can see classic UI page just the same, but you cannot use it in the context. And in fact, a lot of classic UI items have been obliterated from many places. You would need to use features to enable them back. And I genuinely think that this item they've just forgotten about. So probably next miner it will also disappear. So we're creating Freedom UI page from now on always, and we will use mini page. Keep in mind that we have now these two options, web pages or mobile app pages. We're going with web pages. Mini page, select. We'll give it a name, yacht average business process. Same for the code. Maybe we'll add spaces. Average business process. Package, we check. Yes, this is the package that we need. Redundant items such as this one goes away. This one, do we need this? No, maybe. Save will change to OK. Okay, I see that Jakob left, but he did say that he will have to. But I think we might be missing someone else. 5. Yeah, there was 5 of us. Okay, hopefully everything's fine. Okay. And maybe cancel, we will change simply the title to close. This just to get it more aligned with user expectations. So title, pre-configured header caption that will try to obtain either a displayed value of a data source or at least the object name of a data source. This is a pre-configured item. We don't need neither. Our label is going to be average ticket price. And we will now add some page parameters. So we are not employing any data sources. Instead, we will use page parameters, page attributes that will communicate with business process. We can pass values as arguments from business process to page parameter, or alternative, we can use such paces as user inputs. So then we will pass from page parameters into business process parameters, which will be stored in this page element parameter. We will see that in a moment. So first one is number. Number average price. Same we'll use for code. Prefix average price. The necessity of prefix here is a little bit redundant, but I think that this validation is encoded in the Freedom UI Designer that we use. And so not to create different settings for parameters and page attributes, object columns, those that are also called data model attributes. So the validation is still there. It will unfortunately not allow you to skip prefix, even though technically it's not really necessary here. We will also use average price as an element code. And we will use some title on the page. Average ticket price based on the same drive type. Something like this. And the next one is going to be text for our SQL text. Prefix here, USR. And same for element code. Let's save this. Close this. So we have this selected here already. Perfect. And we'll call this yacht average price by the name of the page that we're calling. A very important, very frequently forgotten item that if we do not select items that complete this process element, then we will forever stuck in the execution in it. So it's not an error. It's just that business process will be forever processing, which will not have an effect on CPU because it will not, sorry, I need a moment. Sorry for that, we have severe power shortages. So I was saying that, say you have an element, not necessarily a page element, but any element that we forget to logically add a scenario for the finish of the execution. Like in this scenario, not specifying which user action is considered like the end of element execution. Means that the business process is stuck. CPU will not be affected because it works like a perfect engine, meaning perfect machine, or perfect automatron, which means that it will not be sending or receiving signals. It's not going to be checking. it will only proceed, it will execute until it can, and only after if hit by something, like in this scenario by an action, it will proceed. But memory consumption will become a problem. We will create a memory leak because the memory that we are using for these items that we've seen will never be released. So even for user in this scenario, user will click OK, seemingly everything's fine. It's not. So we will need to ensure that in both cases, this element is complete. We're reaching final destination, memory release. Now for the SQL tag and average price, we use these to show user data. So SQL text, we have now in process parameter called SQL text parameter, and average price is the result of our SQL script execution and is also in global parameters, average ticket price parameter. Just to remind you, this is done within the script. We are setting this value, SQL text, average price. Let's save this process and try this from user perspective. I'll have to refresh my user browser tab, open a record, and this is going to be our almost final execution. And we see a problem here. So business process works as we expect. Maybe on top of this, I should add that, well, something still can go wrong for user, maybe user timeout, or maybe user just accidentally closed this tab completely, which is fine, can definitely happen. Fortunately, even with this called pages, they don't go anywhere. Just like a task, they will still be under business process tasks. So this case, when user ignores these two buttons in whatever way, then it's not preventing us from finishing business process. The problem is with this parameter and how it is shown, which is not a user-friendly approach. In normal UIs, we've used the multi-line property. And I have this tiny cogwheel in here. Using tiny cogwheel, I first check where am I saving this? To yacht, perfect. And if I go to the SQL text field, I first will try to find the no-code solution here. And unfortunately, there is no multi-line property, probably something that will be addressed. And if you voice it out, it will be addressed sooner than later, but nothing here. So now I'm forced to go to the source code. And actually, we've discussed that I should close this. I want maybe to show a feature, but I wouldn't really rely on it. So I went to source code, and let's consider what do I want to check. Do I need to check the model config? No, because this is the data source, and in fact, we are not using any data sources here. Okay. Do I need to check a view model? These are only page attributes as an intermediate operator to connect view with data when necessary or to be processed in otherwise in business processes. So they're already married with business processes. So I only see my parameters, nothing that I can, what? Integer? Sorry, this is my bad. This is decimal code, average price. Super weird naming. It's just that by default, when you add a new page parameter, by default, this is the name. And I thought that maybe I have forgotten to save this proper, which I didn't. It still says user average price. Unfortunately, for whatever reason. So we have the page parameter user. It doesn't even do this for parameters. Yeah, so nothing to be done about it. That default will become, so this is, you probably remember, this is something that we will be using if we will use handlers, for example. This is the actual name of a page attribute. As long as it's unique, we're fine. Though I have to say with page parameters, it can be a bit confusing. Now, I never noticed this. So view config is what we need because this is our settings of our control. And here, let's find our SQL text. There you are. And we have here columns and rows. Will rows affect? No. What rows will do, they will simply add more empty rows in here, but the line will still not be broken. So it will take more space vertically, but it will still look essentially the same, the text. So what we want to actually do is to find the multi-line and change this to true. Save. I still do not recommend having both designer, but actually if I go back to Freedom UI Designer, I will see that someone had changed something and I can reload. But still not the safest way. Now I will refresh my page. And I will see this now proper. Okay, so perfect. Our process works perfectly. Everything is on the page. Now, one of the home assignment, which is optional, to recreate this business process exactly the same. This is not part of your fast track assignment, though I would recommend trying recreating it in the very same manner. And I know that some of you already started doing this. Okay, now to the next item on our agenda. Sorry, not still two smaller items. How to find documentation and process performance. So documentation is pretty straightforward. Every element, which is very fortunate, until recently some didn't have these links, and some of them more complex than others. So every element, the ones that we do have on the page, the others that we don't. Under the settings, we'll have this tooltip. If we click on this, we will have some small description of the process item. More importantly, we have this read more option, which will navigate us to an article on how to utilize an element. Some articles seem to be short, but in fact, they are connected to other articles, which is usually the case for more complex items. AI here, also same read more. This one will have more items for input, but it will rely that you already know how to work with AI skills. These are API skills, callable for business process. Process files also can be misunderstood. It had a seemingly larger article, but actually it's a pretty straightforward element, so it's just not connected to other articles that are diving deeper into the features of this element and how to utilize it. No. Now, if we go to process log, and we will filter this so that we only use this average ticket. Sorry, average ticket. So we will see in process log all the executions of this business process. The earliest one is from yesterday, and we can and should change the fields to display because one of the more important fields owner, start date, end date. Well, this could be still useful. Oh, sorry, start date might be a little bit more useful. But what I want to add is execution duration in milliseconds. And just maybe to remind you, a millisecond is 1,000, which means 1/10, 100ths, no, 100ths, 1,000. Just give me a second. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, of a second. 1,000th of a second. So we will see that depending on the type of the execution, we will see first that earlier executions, on average, are going to be slower comparing to following executions. So the very first execution was 93 milliseconds. We will skip this one for a moment. Then we had 85, and then we had 12, which is the simpler version of our business process before we added new components. So this is called warm-up. The very first executions of your business process are going to be slower comparing to other ones. And if we jump inside the execution, we will see, no, sorry, this is probably, this one is faster one, and this one is probably no drive type ID, but these one are still simple ones. So we will see that before data binding and after data binding, we still have values that are considerably smaller than this value, which is a warm-up. And we can do the same to check the execution of business process elements, column setup. And we will add also duration in milliseconds. Save. Duration of in milliseconds, and we see that drive type read is 11 milliseconds and average ticket price is 9.4 milliseconds. If we go to this next one, maybe we will see the drive type 3. No drive type doesn't work for us. Maybe use this one. Average ticket price 3 milliseconds. So this is a great thing about script tasks. Now we have this enormously large, but they are fine. Just to clarify what they stand for, we used debugger yesterday. So when we stopped the execution of our business process and used Microsoft Visual Studio to go through the elements. By the way, one of the items that I did not do yesterday we should obviously disconnect debugging in order to proceed normal execution. Just simply canceling the breakpoint. I hope this is obviously once you debugged, you need to cancel breakpoint, otherwise it will stay. So this was the last item that we've done yesterday, and I've jumped to explaining. So the debugging mode was still on until I return to it. But usually debugging will return to you much greater values. And here finally also something big, but that is because, and we can see this here, yacht average. Well, sorry, a typo here, but this is the element of a user page that we have created. This is so user actions will take a long time, obviously, and maybe for user actions, you can even introduce minutes in here so that you can you can only address the executions of system actions, but maybe you want also to address like user behavior if maybe they don't work with the pop-ups instead of closing them like we did in our scenario, and maybe you want to address that somehow, avoid them, rethink your processes, etc. Or maybe create tasks instead, or uh, address this otherwise. So this is about analyzing process performance and documentation, and now WebSocket interaction between server and client. Up until now, most of our interactions, unlike the pop-up page, were from client to server. If I open inspect mode and go to network, and I'll try to refresh my list, I will see until I uncheck. Sorry, I thought this is toggleable. But yeah, if I refresh, um, let me clear this real quick because I have more queries now. I'm running some select queries. We will be looking into that in greater details for my from my client to my application server. So one of them is this data service. Another one that we will discuss later on. So I'm using a data service in this scenario, a post type API call. It returns status 200. It has some payload. Data service has a more complex payload. It has some response, which is the representation of data that we're seeing here. So this is client to server. But sometimes we need also server communicating to client as long as client is listening. And if we go to console, we will see that we have a WebSocket channel opened for this URL, and we have some sort of heartbeat, which means that once every 30 seconds, because this connection can be fragile due to multiple reasons, every 30 seconds, application server will play ping pong with our client. So application server will ping and our client will respond with pong just to make sure that WebSocket is working. And one of the application is actually the page from business process. So our business process is operated by business process engine on application server, and then it commands client to show a pop-up. There are other applications as well. One of the applications is enabling a very cool feature for on the object level, which is called live data update. So here is our yacht object. And under object settings, we have behavioral settings and we have enable live data update. So let's save and publish this. I'll have to refresh this. And what happens is now our yacht pages, including the yacht list page, because this list page is connected to yacht object as a primary data source, and yacht form page are listening to object events. So let's, what do we have here? test 3 doesn't have a captain. Or no, let's change something about Titanic. What can we do about Titanic? We will change captain from supervisor to Andrew Baker. So where's captain? Captain, supervisor. And I'm changing this to Andrew Baker and saving this. And nothing happens. Let me check. First that, yeah, it had to refresh. And I also see that I filtered by socket my network, nothing changed. Maybe I did not enable live data update. We can use restart, obviously, but before that, I want to just go to configuration again, find my yacht, and see if it's enabled. Yes, it is enabled. Maybe hard refresh will help. Because this is an object feature, but it affects how client pages that are relying on that object are behaving. Okay. Very disappointing, I have to say. We'll have to restart probably. Okay, Captain Andrew Baker to supervisor. Save. What if I try something else? Sorry for this. This is very unfortunate, but let's take this opportunity to dive into, could it be just something wrong with the lookup? No, it's not the lookup, definitely. Maybe it's the special property that Captain is clickable here, but unclickable here, which is not something that we usually do. Let's modify this and try this fix. If not, we will have to restart our application. Okay, so my captain wasn't a link, and I will also align it to be a selection window. I'll save this. I'll refresh this. This is not one of the problems with the build because I was preparing for today using the exact same build, which has the same issue with Workplace, but not the same with live data update. So we have live data update on. Now I see the problem here is already here. When I'm trying to force the socket, I don't see anything here. But just to be on the safe side, new window. Could it be because we disallowed editing? Because that would be disappointing and I wouldn't expect that. This will not affect our training for today for much longer. Obviously, I have plan B, but I can see that I have some troubles. This we've seen before, favicon related issue, even though default, probably because we're using default favicon, but loading of the page is uncomfortably long. What about from here? Seen this before. This should not affect us. An exception that wasn't modified, obviously. We kept capturing an exception that a business rule is trying to work with different data types because we are dividing decimal by an integer, but actually business rule was updated and the necessary conversions are made. So we've seen this working. It's not a problem, but the exception evidently is still there. Now back to page over here. Titanic 2, save. Nothing changes. Okay, we can try the same. This is probably that I will have to investigate further or even report. So let's see if it works in this environment, because plan B, I have this available in accounts. And let's open this in new tab. ACOM sample. We will modify the name of the ACOM sample. And then just not to keep you, if it doesn't work in the environment, if I'm having an environmental issue, which means that I'm actually having a WebSocket issue, then we will try this with a different environment. Very uncomfortably long. Let's see our resources. CPU at 70, memory 60. Okay, maybe this is the browser. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what browser wants from me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to close unnecessary browser tabs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Back here. I'll close console just temporarily. And now that it is loaded, I will take it away as a new window and finally try this here. So sample 23. Okay, and save. Yeah, so we see live working in the environment. And probably this is me tampering with the list page, but this will require further investigation. Let's try a different environment just as a showcase of this. So Y1 dev, it's already started. Perfect. Y1 dev, an environment that I use for preparations. We'll need a moment for it to warm up. While it's warming up, let's try this again. With accounts, account sample changing 23 to 46. Save. Yeah, no problem here. Heartbeat working. So no, this is not a WebSocket issue. This is my object properties issue, and maybe this property has some limitations regarding edit mode. So we will just test this. Okay, so this is the preparation environment. Let's see first if inline editing is enabled. Yes, inline editing is enabled. Very unfortunate, this is undocumented. So what you see in this different environment, one YDev, inline editing is enabled. And now if I will try to run the same operation, Titanic 23, save, yes. Well, and we learned just something new. An unfortunate turn advance, and I'm very unsure that this is how it used to work. Maybe this should be discussed, but I really don't like this. That it is relied on inline editing, and I think that inline editing is a feature that very often comes in a way rather than gives you something extra. So at this moment, we will just have to keep in mind that we will have to enable inline editing for the list to benefit. But this is just one of the benefits because this should also work unlike with the list. So now I see I have two instances of Titanic 2, right? One is in the big screen and one is in the small screen. So what I expect here, I change Titanic 2 to Titanic 19 and save. No way. Okay, so I'll play around with this and I will report my findings. But actually, this kind of feels to be a bug. We know our WebSocket is healthy. We know that live data update feature works. We've tested this for account in the same environment. We know that when my inline editing is disabled, which seems to be the only difference in my other environment, it works as expected. And here it does not in different scenarios, not environment, but object issue. And the only difference is components that rely on it as a data source. So I will try to investigate it and report it hopefully by tomorrow, maybe Friday. But we will no longer waste any time here. The only thing that I do want to mention here is that when you shouldn't use this. Say we have a list that is used by a few hundred employees that will be adding records simultaneously. So what it means that if I just add a new record, what I usually expect test account, it to appear on top, right? And it is very useful because I want to return back to it. Now, if I did this simultaneously with few dozen people, then no matter how large my list is, Creatio will only load few dozens of records into the list component. So I will not find my new record. Moreover, if I simply open these questions and hundreds of people are adding records simultaneously, so I should expect some blinking. Another thing, so this will be repeatedly loading and loading and loading and loading because every time as it's listening to server commands to refresh because a new record had been added. So we need to use this carefully, and by default, it is disabled. Another thing where we can use WebSocket is using adding a user task that can later be used in a business process. And we have a special element for that called user task. Okay, if it persists, I will have to switch to a different environment. I will stop my Y1 dev. maybe. I will stop my Y4 test. Let's go for a break. I will restart my app. Check if restart maybe could have even helped with live data update, but evidently something is wrong with the environment. Everything takes too long. So I have 10 minutes on my clock. Let's get back to it in 15. Okay, at 25. Give me a thumbs up. Perfect. Thank you, John. Thank you, Katerina. Mahabub. Okay. Scene 15. Done. So I'm using a different environment because, and this is important, please disregard findings about if list edit mode affects live data update. This has nothing to do with list edit mode, evidently. During break, I just tried the restart and I do have a compilation error, and compilation error is regarding the object drive type in yacht. So the problem with the ID of this object, I wouldn't know how this works, but what I want you to do is I would encourage you to enable live data update and test it as I tried to test it, just like it works with the count. It should work exactly the same with yacht. My problem is more complex. So how would I address that? Well, you can fix it within the same environment. So first, I would go to source code of my yacht form page to delete the multi-select component and its references. Sorry, a moment. So source code of the form page, delete multi-select component, and then carefully one by one deleting the data files, the lookup, finally the object. But better yet, rather than trying to use this type of fixture, it's best if you oftenly create your backups as archives or as for rollbacks or for your cloud repositories, which if you're not using local environment, this is still available to you. If you export your solution as often as possible, you will see that this zip archives, they will have a date up to a 14, 13, 20, up to a second, which is very cool. So if you have a collection of such zip archives, it will be very easy to find one that is pre-error, maybe even to be on the safer side to use a few items before. You can even create some documentation for those zip archives. So for cloud, even though it doesn't allow you to use some automated version control, you can still do this on your own. If you by name, by time, you can simply document what you have done and easily undo this, importing it back to a problematic environment, which would be fixed 9 times out of 10. But not to waste our time, I'm simply using a different environment that I used for prep for our next step. And our next step for our agenda today is unlocking packages. I will need yet another environment for that. Sorry. And we've discussed this already, that in real life scenario, when you will try to move a package from one environment to another, it will arrive locked. And sometimes you will need to unlock it. When that need might arrive. Let us start the login page, and while it warms up, we will discuss when that is needed. So when do we need it? Say you have developed even if you're experienced developer but new to Creatio, you follow the recommendation and you develop your first phase fully in the cloud environment. And then at some point, you simply has a well-founded need to use an on-prem development environment. So you deploy an on-prem environment. You export zip archive, no other way, export zip from your cloud development and import it into import it to on-prem development. And you will see that it arrives locked. So you unlock it. Targeted package, make modifications using local file system. And then one of the two things happen. You either keep developing in local only, so you delete your cloud environment because keeping them synced is nearly impossible. And if you're many developers and it's now just the complexity of project that is arising, and this is why you need local environments, then you use the scenario that we've discussed, multiple environments, version control system to exchange within multiple local environments. Or if this was just one task, during that task, any development in cloud should stop so that you're not in conflict. You did something on-prem, you didn't have to waste any time to activate any services such as global search or email listener because you only made a task that is related maybe to some services, to some integrations. You build that solution. I'm talking if it's not a separate package. If it's separate package, then yeah, people could still be developing in cloud and you just create your own new package locally and then you deploy it to cloud. But if you are the sole developer, which happens a lot, and this is just one task that required it, so you developed it locally, you delivered it to cloud, and you deleted your local environment because you should not rely on syncing them. You need to concentrate whether you are developing on-prem or on cloud. So let's get to our yes. No, yes. Our test environment. And meanwhile, we can open database. And I've already used some select from the same, so I will not run a new query because we are now using Y1, Y2 instead. So if we check into system package object, and I ordered it by created on descendingly, we will see the items that we have added to it. So user yacht, customer 360, multiple items. This is for test environment. And maybe let's try the same for Y1 dev, which is our development environment. So we will select from system package, ordered by, created on. There is around 170 packages. And in our development environment, we have more items. So we have our yacht, we have our customer 360, but we have also data binding, we have telemetry items. And the difference is that we will see here is who is maintainer. Maintainer here is customer, or sometimes we will see TerraSoft maintainer, or other companies. So two things have to be modified in order to unlock a package. The maintainer has to be non-Creatio but customer, and also the installation type should be 0. It is the install type 1 that prevents you from modifying package. The is locked is redundant for you. You should not address is locked. This is connected to SVN, which you will probably not use. It's the install type, which is the primary issue. You could technically change the maintainer Creatio to customer and unlock even Creatio packages, though this is not recommended definitely. And if we go to the test environment, I think I've unlocked it already, yes, as I was preparing. Yeah, so install type is 1, and this is why it's installed. So let me do 2 items here. I will undo my prep change first. User yacht, scripts. No, I only tried this, I think. Right, it's in custom. I will elaborate why it's in custom. So let me really quick undo this. So we are on the same page. Okay, perfect. So now this, how it will look like when you will import your solution. It is locked. You can temporarily use the hotfix, but it will lock very soon. I think in 3 hours or half an hour. I remember this discussion, but I don't know where we ended up. But in both scenarios, this is very uncomfortable still. So if we want to make this editable in newly arrived package to an environment, instead, we are using a script task. This is not something that you will be able to repeat because your trial and demo environments, cloud environments, are different. And in your trial or demo environment, it will arrive unlocked. And now I want to create a script, and I want to create a local script. And this is one of the reasons to employ custom package instead. Whatever is in custom package, I do not want to migrate to be delivered with as part of my solution. I am now going to create an item that should only be actual for my Y2 test. So I'm using custom package as an isolation. And so what I want to do is to add a SQL script that will only modify that installation type. So that would be add SQL script code unlock yacht before packages maybe. Apply, though it's not going to be delivered. This is going to be one item that I install locally. So actually, when installed is not necessary because not important, because I'm not going to use loader to install. I'm going to use instead, I'm going to use manual install. So here is under day 8, you will see unlock package. And here, I don't have it in Postgres because in your Postgres, you cannot, you don't have to modify this. And so I'm updating system package table, and I'm setting the install type where name is user yacht to 0, changing it from 1. Save. close, and I will install it, this. And so because this is in custom package, I will now see that yacht is available for modification, but because it's in custom package, when I'm done doing whatever I was hoping to achieve in my local environment, and the only proper way to deliver it back to my cloud development environment is through the zip archive. If I'm not going to use local and co-develop as other workers, I would export my user yacht as an application better than as a package, upload it to cloud, and destroy this local environment. And the script task is isolated, so it will not have any effect. It's not going to be installed on my cloud development environment. But there is also a Clio option. So if you are going to be utilizing Clio utility, I do recommend doing that. There is also an even easier way to unlock there. There is a special command where we can unlock any package. But again, we need to be responsible in doing that. And so next big topic and final big topic for today is creating a service in Creatio. So in Creatio, we can both call services and we can host services. And those services that we host are usually used from Creatio, but we can also use some for integration purposes. And if we go to configuration, oh, sorry, this is to test. Let's work within dev. If we go to configuration, we can see this source code, which is C# source code. Only some of them are services. So C# source code can be your own declaration of new classes, complex methods that you can later reuse. You can include them into your script tasks maybe. So this can be a reusable C# code compiled separately and something that you can call for. Another application is to use this for services. And there is a naming convention that if this is a service, you include word service in name. So we can see multiple services in here. And another good reason to have at some point, at least to try installing Creatio locally, because we can use a global search using some tools, maybe like Visual Studio, to find some good examples, though we can still have some good examples here. My recommendation is to memorize word crypto because this cryptographic service is the simplest visually comprehensible service that we can use as an example to build our own services, because there are certain demands in how we use them services. So what we're using in Creatio is WCP, which stands for Windows Communication Protocol, a protocol that essentially explains how a C# declared class can be turned and its method can be turned finally into an endpoint, which is a callable service method. And under that protocol, we have certain demands in how to declare such classes. And we use what is called in C# decoration. So these are mandatory decorations. And so this structure may not be very easy to memorize. So this is why we remember some good examples, a simplest possible structure. So in here, we first decorate as a service contract our class, And then we still need to decorate properly our method. And the method itself here, we don't care about this method. It used to be looking more complex. We only need from here the necessary usings and the necessary decorations structure. The one thing that will be redundant to us is core encryption, but hopefully this is pretty straightforward. So we have some cryptor provider factory, which is evidently part of the encryption, and so it has its own that class it has his own methods, but we are not interested in any of this. We only need this to have a sum space to where we can easily extract necessary decorations and usings, such as a service model of system, part of the .NET framework, .NET web modal activation, and TerraSoft's own web common. And another thing that is not what we're going to use, but you will be maybe facing sooner or later, is more complex use cases for data exchange. So we're essentially here we're serializing to usually JSON text, then deserializing back. And this is something that is most frequently used. But sometimes we need to work with more complex entities, which gives which means that we need to get another decoration level. So let me elaborate on that. You do not need to memorize this. Visa data service. This is just as an example of something more complex. So we have our operation, and now somewhere here, moment, we have a decoration of data type. So if it's a usual standard data types, then you don't need this. But sometimes we need to feed some more complex data structure. We need to process classes rather than standard data types, which requires its own level of decoration. So this is how we decorate this, which essentially will allow to serialize and deserialize a more complex data constructs. But this is a way down the road in more complex scenario. More often than not, you're working with standard data types just for data exchange. So we're going to build a service hosted by Creatio. Creatio hosts RESTful services. And you will be doing this just simply in the cloud using the add source code item. I will still use the file system only to showcase, only to show some, only to showcase some Creatio classes. So next step, we're adding a new source code items. So yacht, add source code, and we'll call this user yacht service. Title yacht service. Package user yacht. Okay. And for the example, under day 8, you will see a snippet for the service. So here it is, and you will simply copy paste it directly in here. But I will do something different. Instead, I will use a placeholder. And I cannot obviously compile this code. So instead of save and publish, where publish means prepare, and for C# means compile, I will simply save this text to find it in my file system. So next item is download packages to file system, mandatory. No changes found. That is because, well, hopefully it was actually updated, but that is because I've actually prepped and I have a code. But I do genuinely hope that, so I mean that in my Y1 dev, I actually already executed this and I inserted, but what I expect is now that I actually updated that whatever code I had is going to be replaced with placeholder. So let's test this. Builds 1ydev, TerraSoft Web App, or better yet, I will run simply my Visual Studio. If we will have to debug to be on the safe side, I will run this as admin. Just a moment. Run as a different user, local admin. And what I want to open is project. And thankfully, Creatio does generate those for us automatically. So file, open, project or solution. My builds, Y1 dev, TerraSoft Web App, TerraSoft configuration. Here, packages, our yacht package, files, so we don't need schemas, files, and here is auto-generated project. Weird modification time, so maybe it won't. Not sure about this. Okay, so let's open this. Yacht service. Yeah. Writing to modification time didn't seem to properly respond, but we actually see that it works as expected. Now I see my placeholder. So here is my project, which only consists of my yacht items. We can see here also something that we've done yesterday, our C# for script task, which includes the classes. And yesterday, an important thing, I will keep this open just for comparison, but now back to our service. And so now I will take this example and add it here. So what do we have here? We have the necessary using statements. We have, as discussed, necessary decorations for our class and necessary decorations for our method. And this decoration, as we've discussed, will turn this method to a callable endpoint. But actually, we have here in this service two different methods. One is just a test method, a more simplistic get method. So we'll concentrate on this one first. A super simple method. Because it's get, we can simply run it from any browser. And what it's going to do is simply, just as an example, return us OK. This method is useful to test if our service is callable in the first place by this simple method. If the service is callable, but something is not working with our more complex method, then the problem is not with service, but here. So this is how having such simplistic safeguard type methods can be very useful to us. So now let's dive deeper into what we're doing here. So first, class decoration. This is not something to really understand. This is something to remember. This is part of the protocol, and this is why we need some examples to copy paste from. Now, declaring our class, yacht service class, we inherit from base service, and because we're using Visual Studio, we can actually dive into any of them. Then we have this unique interface, which is not a certain methods demanding interface. This is a marker interface. What this means is this is sort of a promise to IIS that we will run this service as read-only. So we are not going to make any modifications to connections. We're only running this in read-only. And so what it allows us to do, it will allow us to run our calls in multi-threads. Without this interface, IIS will build a query, which means that the calling of all of our services will essentially become much longer rather than asynchronously running them in multi-thread. So now we are decorating our method with, so this is going to be a post type of call. So we have some specifications, but this is a standard. Again, this is a copy paste type. As long as you understand when to use post and get, with post, we will be sending some bodies, and you will see if you search through Creatio services that only very few are using get method type. Most are using post type. So decoration in here. And now we are declaring our new get max price by drive type. So the idea behind this service is we are calling this service from Creatio or from third-party applications. And what we will feed a drive type ID, and this service will check all yachts that are operational, share the same drive type ID, and return the maximum price but from yachts that share the drive type and operational. So how do we employ it? So first, if we fail to provide drive type ID, we return some -1 just as an error. And obviously we could make it a little bit more elaborative, but this will be sufficient for the simplistic example. And then we will use core database of Terrasoft in order to instantiate a unique select class, a very useful class that bypasses entity. This select is designed to build queries directly to database, and this is where comparison is important. In our script task, we used an entity schema query, which is also meant for reading data, but is relying on Creatio entities, using user connections, not just for the authentication to be connected to Creatio instance in the first place, but also to use, but also to respect all the entity properties, including access rights. In this scenario, a select is not going to respect any access rights, we are not even instantiating a Creatio object. We're simply building a query to our database. And this select class, and we can, if you wish, dive into the select class and its structure. But with this select class, it's split in different lines, but this can all definitely be one line. So we can run some multiple methods, including, so we are taking here we're applying a maximum function to a user price. And keep in mind that these are the names of database columns, which makes difference in some cases. So from user yacht, where user drive type suffix ID. So if we are using select versus entity schema query, then make sure to employ suffixes. We've discussed how this is a pattern. Creatio adds them to database columns, and we are talking to database directly here. Is equal column parameter new drive type ID. This is something that we fed in. And user status ID, we've talked that we only want operational, also equal, but here it's a new GUID which is hard-coded. So this is a still feasible approach. You can maybe try a more unique logic, but this one works perfectly. If you will forever fix it to, if you properly bind your data, you know that this is something that will be used in all environments, then you can, as in this example, hard code your value. And obviously this value is different to us. So I'm going back to my environment, to Studio, lookups. And here, I will find my yacht statuses. I'm only interested in operational. In your scenario, I already did this today, but probably ID will be hidden. So remember to first display them, select field to display, add ID column. And now I can simply take the ID of operational and use in my service method and use in here. So this is the operational ID. Now we need to cast down, because instantiating an object in Creatio simply used this as a simple C# object. So here we need to cast it as select, and then we will write a result, which is where we use execute scalar. And execute scalar will only return the first, there should be an explanation, returns the first column of the first row with where is resolved. But we are using an aggregation here because we are applying a max function. So execute scalar works perfectly to us. But if you will try to employ some more complex, more lower level, I'd say, rather than using existing methods, you would try to do something else. We can actually see how this execute scalar is built. And we have this execute scalar async. And here we see something unique. So you can dive deeper into that if you wish. We can stay and try to work deeper with this, or if you have it installed locally, you can use this. But you see that we are using some DB executor, which runs through the DB executor, we are actually using database executor. We are extracting necessary data. But another thing to remember, if you're diving this deep, making your own services, is how we are protected by this using statement. This is because this executor was constructed within, outside of the .NET framework scope. It was designed using Visual C, so garbage collection technology is unavailable. So you will have to be very careful, and you will have to either protect yourself by using statements or dispose. Otherwise, you will have memory leak. But our execute scaler already has that logic in place, so we do not need to worry about it. Now, I need to save my change regarding this. We do not compile anything in file system. The only safe and proper way to run compilable code is to compile it in Creatio IDE. So now I'm switching. I've done everything that I wanted in my file system, and now I shall switch to my configuration. And here I'm going to first update packages from file system. I will see now that my yacht service has my code, but it's not part of the assembly yet. It's simply a C# text. So now I need to compile it. And only after I can run this code. User connection is still very important. We will now see. We still employ user connection, but only for authentication, not for access rights, because we're using select. So before we proceed, we will do something simple. We will try first our test method. So for that, we are using REST. This is the standard procedure. So for IIS environment, we start with 0, then REST, then name of the service, not the name of the source code, sorry, not the name of the source code file, not user yacht service, but the actual service name, how we declared it, and there it is, user service. So REST, then user service, and then the method name. And we call this method get example. Get example. And we see our expected response, okay. So this tells us that our service, so this method is callable, and thus we can call our service. So perfect. If the next step doesn't work, this is on method, not service. But this is only available because in this browser session, I'm already logged in. And so user connections is responsible for that. If I try the exact same request in incognito mode over here, I will see an authorized error, which is expected. Now, we can call our services from third parties. We will study that in coming sessions. Today, we're going to call our service from Creatio, and we're going to use a client module to call this service. So again, we're opening our yacht page. Usually from configuration, but just to remind you, this is also available from here. And we will add another menu item to our actions. So actions button, menu items plus yacht service action. Just like before, we will use cancel changes as a placeholder. Title, yacht service. Confirm. Unfortunately, yes, this is something that I see. After you confirm and then modify, try to confirm again, it doesn't disappear, though it is confirmed actually. Now we shall publish this and go to the source code. And now back to our, example. And we will have yet another handler for request called run web service request. So let's add this handler. We shall extend our handlers carefully with this new one. And first thing, as we've done before with buttons, we need to replace the cancel request of the button that we used as a placeholder with this new button. So Control C, and we will find our view. Should be lower. Let's try Control F, cancel. Okay, so here's our yacht service button. It runs cancel record changes. Instead, it will now, the request is now run web service request. Perfect. Now back to our handlers. So we already discussed how this will work, why it's asynchronous, why we have not only request but next to run next handler if there is one. Then first we'll run something simple to console, and then we will extract drive type ID. We've already read a simple data items. For example, we've already read price and passengers count for that on-client calculation. Those are simple data types. In here, when we are opening a record and instantiating a data source, which is yacht, at this time, we have an instance of yacht translated into data source of a client module and saved in client hidden memory. At this time, that drive type is not just an ID value, but actually is a JavaScript object because of the because it how it works with display value. So instead, when we request for user drive type, and this is something that we also need to modify, what we obtain is both ID and the displayed value. And thus, we need to take just the value from that object to ignore the display value to obtain the ID. So this is not our attribute name, module name, drive type. Here is the proper attribute name for this environment. back in here, user drive type, and we will extract an actual ID. Now we need to create an instance of HTTP client, and we're going to use one of the dev kits. What we need here is this HTTP client service, and this is where we are going to add a new SDK, and this one is called Creatio DevKit Common. Now you can actually, so this is a dependency here that we first need is we first loading this kit, and only then we load this form page, Yard form page module. So we need to specify the utility module that we're loading, this one, the Creatio DevKit. We need to specify the utility module. And then we need to give it a name in the factory module function. And this is something that just has to be a unique name. You can load multiple utility modules here, and then you can give multiple names. So SDK is just a convention of naming, but it can be something different. So when by this, we will then in our code refer to an instance of this utility module that we will use to properly call our services. Now you can actually find this in file system. Unfortunately, this will not be of any use to you because in file system, what is used first of all is TypeScript and minimized, so it's essentially unreadable. But if we go to day 8 and 2 links here, sorry, wrong. Day 8 for participants, day 8 links. We will see dev kit link here. These are some usings of WebSocket. We're a little bit short on time, but these are customer effects, some examples of how to use WebSocket, creating your own user actions. Maybe in the very end, I will share some concerns. Some of them use like send all users message, which is not a careful approach, but that was meant as just as a dummy example. But now we're concentrating on this, so we can copy link, and here you can read everything that is available with this dev kit with this dev kit, so you can go through it, and also you can see what is employed by it. So this is your documentation for this specific one. So these are unfortunately not something that can easily be accessed from Academy website. So this is why you have that link. And what we're going to employ from it, we're going to use get configuration base service URL in order to obtain base URL. So to construct our HTTP request. Then transfer name is a constant of REST. This we've seen as we've did build our GET, right? Then the same principle, we need to first specify the service that we are running and the name of the method that we are running. And then we also all this into an endpoint when we are combining the base URL, the transfer name, the service name, and method name. And then to body, we add some parameters. This is all available because of we are using this utility module instance and running this HTTP client service. And now we also fit in drive type ID that we've extracted from page parameter over here. So we are feeding drive type ID. And now this is something standard because of the post type method. So we create a promise. We call the service and we await for the response. And usually this would have a much more complex structure. And if you used to it, then hopefully you may appreciate that this is achievable with this devcat with just one line. And we will also run put something into console log, which is going to be price, and from response body, we will extract the result. And this is unrelated to service. Again, this is just how we are creating chains of our handlers. Let's save this. Refresh this. So we need maximum. We have drive type. It is, well, we'll make it operational for a while, and we will add a new one. Test2, price 5,000, passengers 50, length 30. The drive type, okay, we will change drive type for Titanic also. Status, also operational. Back to Titanic. It's already power. Okay, perfect. Test2, also power. Okay, so actions. Yacht service. Pum pum. Let me refresh this page. Inspect, actions, network. Sorry, socket. My bad. Yacht service. No, it's not. It's not the filtering problem. We're actually running into a problem with running a service. Most unfortunate. So we have now two issues today. First was the object, and second was running web service. Just to be on the safe side, I will test again that I'm still logged in, because this could be no, it's not that. Everything is fine. So we can see that we are running our get example. So this is exactly what we should expect from our new service. And the problem is that we are not even calling this, because at least we would see some problems with the request. So either our button is unreactive, or either our button is unmapped properly. We can check this. Actions, yacht service, edit, execute custom code. No, it is mapped. It is mapped properly. It's not the drive type ID, because we have a handler for drive type ID. It's just the call. Oh, of course, I've talked about how to introduce the module, but I never actually did. Sorry for this. Back to snippets. The problem is, well, we've discussed this, and I didn't actually insert this. So you can simply copy paste the full line. So first, the utility module name, and second, the instance of that utility module name for the instance, refresh. Inspect, network. Still an issue, bad request, but at least we have something. Why bad request? Let's check our payload. We did send proper drive type, but something is bad with our request. Bad request. Well, I'll have to investigate it. Okay, so we see the payload is as expected. We sent some drive type ID. I can actually check it. So this is fine. Body is okay. Here, get max price by drive type ID, yacht service. We can check if our service name and this name are properly specified. We're almost at the end, but maybe we will be able to find the issue live. So let's give it a shot. Yazer yacht service. So in the construction of our request, we should use yacht service. Yacht service, okay. Then we also should use here get max price by driver type ID. Yeah, the request URL seems to be all right. Authentication is all right. Request URL all right. Payload all right. Yeah, this will require some investigation. Sorry for this, but by the time that we start tomorrow, I will definitely have the answer for this. As for the what occurred with my environment, well, there could be multiple reasons, but again, this is why you have to be very, very careful. You need to back up very frequently. You need to share this with other developers very frequently. We're using shortcuts not to waste too much time during our sessions. But yeah, these things can happen. Essentially, I'm having a problem with my ID. So by tomorrow, when we'll start, we will address this first. Why we're not constructing a proper request. Make sure not to forget to include the actual utility module like I did. And for today, let's create an assignment for today. So first, optional is, well, optional, but I would heavily suggest that you would do this. So finish business process with all the debug options for cloud and user page. Second, until we fix this service, create service that will only employ get method. So skip the average price, and because you are not going to do average price, you will actually be doing a different using a different function. So skip this and do the get before tomorrow. And that's it. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to stay. We can discuss them. Otherwise, I'm seeing you tomorrow, same link, same time.
Hello, I have just one organizational question.